guys, what's up? It's Brittany, and today I am bringing you my July wrap-up. I did fairly well this month. I read 9 books. It's better than the one book I read in June. I read a fair mix of books. Some I liked, some I didn't. So I'm going to start with the books that I didn't quite so enjoy. The first book I finished this month was War Storm by Victoria Aveyard. This was the 4th book in the Red Queen Quartet. This book picks up where King's Cage ended, and I rated this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's a very satisfying finale to the series. Wraps things up very nicely. You get to see a few new perspectives in this book through Iris Signet and Evangeline Samos. And you get to delve more into what's going on in their lives and what their thoughts are. And while I enjoyed this book, and I really enjoyed the ending and how it wrapped up the series, this book was really slow, and honestly for me it was a bit of a letdown for the rest of the series. I felt like not a lot happened in this book, and I kept finding it hard for me to go back to the book. I was listening to it on Audible, and every time I had the chance to pick it up, I was just like, maybe not today. I loved the first 2 books in the series, and I thoroughly enjoyed King's Cage, but this one was a slight letdown for me. But like I said, I really enjoyed how the series ended and how it all wrapped up together. I also read Ash Princess by Laura Sebastian. I also listened to this one on Audible, but I picked up this cute little sneak peek at Barnes & Noble. I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. For me, this book was enjoyable, but very predictable and typical. And I had a hard time figuring out whether I liked it or not, what to rate it. I just could not figure out how I felt about this book at all. I was like, I want to listen to it, and I kept listening to it, but I just didn't find myself wrapped up in the story. I found it predictable. The ending did throw me for a loop though, and it gives me hope for the rest of the series. I have to figure out if I want to pick up the rest of the series when it comes out, because this one was just released this year, so I have to wait another year. I'll have another year to stew in my thoughts. This book follows Theodosia, who when she was 6, her kingdom was stolen from her, and she had to watch her mom die. She was kept as a prisoner in the palace, and given a new name, and called the Ash Princess. 10 years later, Theodosia has just now realized that no one is actually coming to save her, so she has to save herself, and she starts working with the rebels. If you enjoy stories about a princess who fights for her kingdom and has to save herself, this may be the story for you. The next book I finished in the month of July was Year One by Nora Roberts. It took me 7 months to finish this book, and I have no idea why. Every time I picked it up, I really enjoyed the story and the characters, and I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. This book follows a group of main characters who, at the beginning of the story, are all spread out, and they eventually come together after a plague wipes out nearly all of the population. They are forced to find a way to rebuild civilization, and on top of that, some of the people who survived end up having magical abilities. This book is very character-driven and relationship-driven as you watch the world and these people rebuild itself after the plague and find a way to create community. The next book in the series comes out in December, and I am going to pick it up when it comes out. The next book I read is Furyborn by Claire Legrand. I really enjoyed this book. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. It's now on my favorite shelf. The next book doesn't come out for a year, and I honestly cannot wait to continue on with the story of Riel and Eliana. One of them is the Sun Queen, and one of them is a Blood Queen. One will destroy the world, and one will save it. Told from both perspectives and 1,000 years apart, they're both playing their part in a prophecy, and it's really interesting to see how it all is unfolding. In the prologue, you find out how Riel's story ends, but you still get so invested in her story and all the twists and turns it takes and how it is going to lead to where it ends. It is so interesting. I still not made a decision on how I feel about the prologue. It definitely hooks you from the beginning. You get really invested, and you're like, oh my god, what just happened? Why did this happen? But also, it spoils how Riel's storyline ends, and I kind of wish that it didn't. Each chapter alternates a girl's perspective, and at the beginning I really wish that it would keep with one of the girls for 1 or 2 chapters and then switch, so that you got to know the characters a little bit more. This book is really good, and I recommend that you pick it up. The next book I read was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars. It's also on my favorite shelf. This book is pure magic. Every time I opened up and read this book, it just felt like such a magical experience. And I could just feel the book. I felt like I was a part of the book. And this story was a lot deeper than I thought it was going to be. A lot sweeter. I didn't know what to expect. I just heard really good things, and so I wanted to pick it up, and I'm obsessed. I put down this book, and I immediately wanted to pick it up again and start listening to the audiobook and just relive this wonderful and beautiful tale. This tells the story of Marco and Celia, who are in this competition, and how their lives intertwine with a circus that's only open at night, and all the people involved with the circus. It is amazing. This book is amazing, and I recommend that you pick it up. The next two books I read were Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda and Leah on the Offbeat, both by Becky Albertalli, both in the same Simonverse. I rated Simon vs. 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I rated Leah on the Offbeat 4 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed Simon more than I enjoyed Leah. I just love Simon's story and how he was trying to figure out who he was and how to tell people and how to come to terms with how people would react. The story is very cute and uplifting. I listened to it all in a day, and I just felt so happy after listening to it. You just get really invested in Simon and his friends and his emails to Blue, who is another boy at his school, and they're both trying to figure out who they are together, and then they meet and they have to deal with what's next for both of them. Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda was turned into a movie called Love, Simon. It is already out. I want to watch it. Leah on the Offbeat takes place the next school year, and it focuses on Leah and how she is bi, but none of her friends know it, and she's struggling with the fact that does she tell them, does it matter, and she has a crush on one of her friends, and she's coming to terms with that and what that means for their friend group. I really enjoyed this story, but I was hoping for a lot more. With Leah being bi, I was hoping that there would be a guy crush and a girl crush, and her trying to figure out how to navigate having two crushes and what that meant for her and like picking one. But it wasn't like that at all. She had one crush, and that's what the story focused on, and that for me was a little bit disappointing. I also didn't enjoy who the crush was. To me, it felt like a cop-out to choose that character. They're very cute together, and I really enjoyed them getting to that point, but I felt like it should have been a different character. This story wasn't as good to me as Simon was. I didn't really connect with Leah as much as I did with Simon. The next book I finished was A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab. This is the second book in the Shades of Magic series. This takes place 4 months after the events of A Darker Shade of Magic. It's all about this magical competition and the ramifications of what happened in A Darker Shade of Magic. I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. To me, this one didn't hold up quite as well as A Darker Shade of Magic. I do see how it is a good second book to connect the first one to the third one and continue the story. I just wasn't quite as invested in it as I was with The Darker Shade of Magic. I felt it kind of slow at some points, and it felt a little disconnected from the first story, except for in parts. My favorite parts about this book were Delilah and Alucard's scenes together, and Delilah and Kel's scenes together. Basically just everything Delilah. Even though she makes some questionable decisions, Delilah's just awesome. I'm Delilah trash. I also really enjoyed seeing Rye's perspective in this book. I'm really excited to read the next book. The next book I read was Save the Date by Morgan Matson. This book is about Charlie navigating her sister's wedding weekend, trying to make it perfect, but one disaster after another may derail this weekend. I rated this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is a really funny and fun read that also has a deeper meaning about family and friendships. I enjoyed everything about this book. It's a really cute story, and it is such a great summer read. I also finished The Diviners by Libba Bray. I listened to this on audiobook. This is a 1920s murder mystery paranormal story. I really loved this story. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars and put it on my favorite shelf. This follows Evie, who is sent to New York, and she helps her uncle solve these paranormal murders. She also learns what diviners are and that she is one, and she uses this gift to help solve these murders. This book is both plot-driven and character-driven at the same time. You learn a lot about the characters in this book, but there's still secrets that are left, and you have to discover them throughout the rest of the series. The lingo is amazing, the setting is amazing, the paranormal aspect to this murder mystery is really fun. Evie is one of my favorite characters in this book. She's trying to balance being a modern girl in the 20s while also trying to help the people she cares about solve this case using the gift that she has. She can be selfish at times, but you see her character grow throughout the story. This is a really fun book, and it's a great introduction to the world of the Diviners. Alright, those are the books that I read in July. What did you read in July? Did we read any of the same books? Do you have different opinions on the books that I read? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're there, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the bookish content that I post. That's all for today. I'll see you guys later. Bye! Let's be honest here. This is a wrap-up. These are my feelings. These are my feelings, okay? My feelings. Got it? So... why did I jump in this fandom from the beginning? Why did I do this? Torture! I don't know. How do I express my feelings? What are feelings? What are book feelings? How do you express them? Without sounding weird. It's a fictional character you're in love with, and you're just like, oh, my precious sweet baby, but they're fictional, and so why should it matter? But it matters.